Welcome back, everyone, to the Industry Growth Leaders Podcast. I'm Michael Simon, and today I'm excited to welcome Sharon Carz, a seasoned commercial real estate professional with RPM Commercial Real Estate in Southern California. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for having me today.
Yes, ma'am, my pleasure. And for our viewers here, Sharon holds the prestigious Certified Commercial Investment Member designation, brings deep expertise across various asset types, and has built a career on referrals as an expert witness, valuation specialist, and advisor to law firms and fund managers. So, Sharon, having said that, you come to us with a very diverse and fascinating background, from competing as a professional figure skater in the World Championships to transitioning into commercial real estate. So, why don't we start at the beginning? Walk us through your journey on how you got started and what led you to where you are today.
Well, it's really funny. I'm going to take you back to my childhood, actually. When I was a kid, I used to play with Lincoln Logs and not
Mhm.
dolls. So that was sign number one.
Yeah.
My father used to always say to me, you should get into real estate. But my only, understanding of that when I was a little kid was my very, very, very loud aunt who was in residential real estate. And she actually became a state senator in Illinois. So
Mhm.
that was my focus. I was always good at math. And I decided instead of going to MIT for physics for college, because the tuition cost more than my parents' house for 1 year, I decided to go off and complete my figure skating career. So I was able to compete for the USA in the World Championships. And then, it had performed professionally for a while. And then it's like, okay, I need to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. So I worked in an accounting firm as assistant controller because I loved Excel, was kind of bored doing billing for 11 partners every month. And on the side, I was working for an attorney doing their billing. And one day they said, hey, do you want to work for me? And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go to law school. And after kind of spending enough time there and in the environment, I thought, no, this isn't quite it. And I was picking up the attorney's mail one day, and it was from a commercial real estate broker talking to another attorney. And he said, I really need an assistant. And I said, hey, can we revisit what you just said? Because I think I really would like to try this. So I went from that position to interviewing at CB Richard Ellis, and I was hired to work with the top producer in the region, but I got hired as an admin.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of my journey. I wanted to get a paycheck and insurance and see from the inside if I really wanted to do this.
Mhm.
So that was kind of an interesting way to start, basically from the mailroom. And I saw the brokers and I'm like, I want to be you. I don't want to be an admin. And so that's kind of where it started.
Yeah. Yeah, so moving from working as an assistant controller at an accounting firm and for a lawyer into commercial real estate, what was the early REO era like? And, how would you say landing in a small shop with those diverse assignments in the beginning shaped you?
Well, that was just a really great run. I actually found an ad on Craigslist, and the person who called me was one of my figure skating friends because he happened to work in that office doing something different than working for the boss. But
Mhm.
we had an office with no sign on the door. There was a dog in the office, and your first test was don't knock on the door. There's a dog here. So it was a very small shop. My broker at the time was a genius. He had figured out the down run before it happened. And so the back shop was all residential. The front shop was just my boss and commercial. And he was a CCIM. And I remember before training under another broker being told the CCIMs are rock stars.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, I'm going to work for a rock star. And so he told me one day, he goes, you need to get your CCIM. You need to take class from this person and I'll help you. And that was the beginning of the CCIM journey.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah,
REO times were wild, wild west. It was quite fun.
mhm. Yeah, I've heard similar stories, from that era. And, getting back to the CCIM designation really quick, I believe only about 10% of commercial practitioners have that today. So just really quick, how would you say that credential opened doors for you and, gave you further credibility in your career once you got it?
It's not easy to get, but it is an absolute game changer because in this industry, there's so much you don't know that you don't know. And being a female in the industry, which is probably 80% male, if you have a CCIM designation, you have a lot of credibility. It's not like you're a residential agent in the wrong lane.
Yeah.
And we look at things differently. We can solve problems differently than somebody who doesn't have this designation. We also have a worldwide network. We're putting on a conference here in Los Angeles. We're bringing in our Taiwan, Japan, and other South Pacific chapters to speak. I think we have Rick Caruso coming to it, and so you just get to interact with a very high level of education and high level knowledge people, successful people, and we can all call each other. We all work for different brokerages, so we're not competing against each other. It's like a fraternity.
Yeah, you beat me
You know,
to it. I
and
was literally going to say it sounds like a brother
yeah,
sister bud.
and we usually get information on like the latest tools. We use Esri as well. I don't know if you know what Esri is, like the back end of all the mapping and government type. I would say, well, if you go to a government tool site and you look at the bottom, it usually says powered by Esri. So
Hmm.
you could be looking at land maps, you could be looking at infrastructure, all sorts of things. So we have access to Esri.
Yeah.
And so it gives us a whole different knowledge base that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, and for the type of work you do, which is very client centric and referral driven, and all the different areas you handle, I can see how that would certainly come into play. I mean, you handle valuations, act as an expert witness in real estate fraud cases, review pro formas for fund managers, and pretty much advise on everything from multifamily to industrial uh, to land deals. So, having said that, I know you're probably laughing when you hear this because every day is going to be really different, but what would you say a typical, work day looks like for you?
I usually spend about an hour reading every morning.
Mhm.
So I'm in Southern California, and California has constant law changes that you have to stay up on depending on what kind of focus you are. A lot of people are product focused, which I recommend for someone getting into the business. I wouldn't say start being all over the place. Um, so you kind of learn the way that the business works. Like I started in office, and then I
Mhm.
learned multifamily, 100 units above, from acquisition of ground through build out through selling the asset when it's done. And that was an on the job experience. I was fortunate to work under a broker that's all they did.
Yep.
And, that was 2.5 years of learning. And getting back to your question, I probably read about an hour a day. And then there's a package of time. I try to look at my email in blocks of the day because otherwise you can be like pulled into email all day long. Um, if I'm in the middle of a transaction, I'll of course check my email till the transaction's done, depending on what it is. I mean, I'm working on a development deal that's a 3-year commitment, so I'm not checking email all day long for a 3-year commitment.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends. Every deal is very different.
True. Yes, they certainly
Sometimes,
can.
sometimes I'm going to city council meetings.
Yeah, and with the laws over there and how they're constantly changing, I can certainly understand how that would put some challenges to, timeline and getting deals done and things of that nature. And when we think about, things like trends and challenges, what would you say some major trends and challenges you're seeing right now in Southern California commercial real estate, whether it's, data centers, development projects, the law changes like you just mentioned, or perhaps market volatility?
Well, that would get down to more like a product type answer.
Mhm.
So, offices, obviously, people know because of the pandemic, office got trampled.
Yeah.
If you're an industrial, you're gonna want to watch transportation trends and supply chain trends. If you're in multifamily, you're going to want to look at the building laws for multifamily. And then maybe, like I said, sit on city council meetings if there's something specific in an area that you're working in or a type of multifamily. It could be like senior housing, it could be faith development sites, it could be affordable. You have to stay on top of that. If you're working in retail, you'll have different things to track.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm more
And
client centric. So if I have a client that has a certain need, like one of my clients buys triple nets, multifamily, and multi-tenant industrial. So say if they're in a 1031 and I get the green light that they're going to be doing an exchange, I start running for what would be the replacement property.
yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned you don't narrowly specialize. So, you talked a lot about different, areas of expertise, trying to stay on top of that depending on what your specific niche is. But in your case, you serve such a wide range of clients. I would have to ask, how do you stay so sharp across so many asset types?
I do not take on more deals than I can stay on top of.
Hmm.
It's just like I have spoken at a number of different, I think ARIA was the last conference on commercial real estate education. And I'll have people come up to me that work in residential space and they'll say, I want to get into commercial real estate. And the first question I ask them, is it for the passion or the payoff?
Uh-huh.
And if they say payoff, I said, stay where you are.
Hmm.
If you're successful, stay where you are because You have to constantly be curious. You have to want to learn. Things change all the time. You can never just sit back in your chair.
Yeah, I feel like you'd have to be a lot more patient too, because with commercial real estate, it can take quite a while for a deal to get done. So if you want that payoff, it's like, hey, the money's good, but you got to be willing to wait. So if you're already successful, might not be the best thing to abandon that and just jump right into this where you kind of have to maybe not start from the beginning, but definitely start learning something new and, getting adjusted to that new timeline and how you're gonna, be paid, how a deal's
You
gonna.
try to stay as organized as you can. That's one thing. And that's one thing if you get into the AI conversation, AI can help you stay organized.
Mhm.
It cannot think for you.
Yeah. No, it certainly can. And, you're clearly ahead of the curve with AI. I'm happy you brought that up. You mentioned that you use Grok, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini regularly. So I would ask, can you share, some powerful examples of how AI is saving you time or improving your work, like maybe turning a flawed fee agreement into a full milestone contract, generating testimonials, or maybe supporting valuations, anything along those lines?
Well, all of those. I mean, it was interesting. I was speaking with an asset manager and I said, "Hey, would you mind looking over this fee agreement?" So he's like, "Here, put it in Grok and here's, ask for the pitfalls." And then I added an arbitration clause and turned it into a milestone agreement. Ran it by legal and it passed. So it can save you time with due diligence. Um, what was the other example we were talking about?
I had mentioned, I mentioned a flawed fee agreement and then generating testimonials and supporting valuations.
Oh yeah, so testimonials. So I did my one of my deals I recently closed. And I don't normally do this, but I'm starting the practice of doing it, is asking my client for a testimonial.
Mhm.
So they said, sometimes they'll say, well, send me something and I'll just sign it. I
Yeah,
thought, well, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I just went in AI and I said, send me a testimonial based on the situation. It spits out 10 different options. I gave it to them. I said, I admitted this came from AI. I mean, you always want to be very clear. If you get some information from AI, you want to disclose that.
absolutely.
So that helped them create a testimonial for me. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, no, it is. Once you find, and discover the different ways that it can help make not only your life easier, but your clients, it really just helps the process just run like a smooth oiled machine. There's so many ways, you can leverage it. And, thank you for sharing those examples. What I would ask next is, you've already seen how it can help you a little bit. If you had like a wish list, is there anything you would ideally like to see it do for your practice or in the future?
Could do my laundry.
That would be something. I'd take
Teach
that
my
too.
laundry how to fold itself. And I've thought about things that people might use AI for, and this could be a huge pitfall. Like, say you put together a financial pro forma on AI in AI,
Hmm.
and then you find yourself in a meeting with the decision maker across the table from you,
Yeah.
and they ask you how you came up with that number.
Hmm.
That's a position I don't wish on anyone.
Yeah.
That's asking to be replaced. So that's one thing about the CCIM education. You understand where the numbers come from, and you can explain where the number comes from and deal with it on a level where you really understand what you're talking about.
Yes, because the AI can certainly, help you put that information, those numbers together, but it's still going to fall on you to properly articulate it to everybody and make them understand why they are what they are. So, total agreement with you on that case. AI has its place. It's not going away anytime soon, but there's always going to have to be that balance between what it should be doing and then what you need, the actual people to be doing. So,
And you have
yeah.
to be very mindful how you talk to it because sometimes, I mean, I've heard stories where, yeah, it'll just validate what you want it to validate.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to be very, very specific. That's why a lot of people go the custom solution route when it comes to, small businesses, other practices, because when it's customized, you can make sure that, one word doesn't get twisted the wrong way and ends up giving you something that, like you said, that maybe it's just valuated that you want to hear or, just gets lost, completely and sends you in the wrong direction. So we're seeing a lot more of that. I mean, yeah, people will still use ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, what have you, for more mundane type things, more like kind of like fetch and retrieve and just getting basic information like that. But more custom solutions are what we're seeing a lot more now for people who want something very specific to their practice, whether it's adopting, their voice, their mannerisms, their language, how they, automate their workflow, things of that nature. So, there's an answer for that too that we've seen, or
We
answers, I
we
should
have a
say.
gentleman who's a genius in CCIM that had an educational webinar on how you can use AI to have an interactive offering memorandum.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, that's specific and it's real and it was amazing.
It is. I'm really curious to see, what the future is going to look like in the next, even like in the next year. I mean, I've heard people say in the next 2 to 3 years that AI is going to be taking care of pretty much everything. Nobody's going to have to worry about, working and things like that. That does concern me a little bit because it raises more questions, I think, that it answers. But with respect to something like what you just mentioned and what we talked about earlier on how it can help people in their practices and their clients, that, I'm more forward looking on that approach. And speaking of the
It
future,
can also help you, like if you're doing due diligence and there's an item that you just forgot about or you didn't even think about, AI can maybe go, hey, you should actually do this as well.
yes. Yeah.
But here's an example where AI will never replace humans is, I mean, I had a meeting with my developer clients and a landowner representative just yesterday with an actual presentation. And the conversations that happened in that room would never be possible in AI.
Yeah. Yeah. That I
Going on
understand.
an on-site, walking through a property, discussing. I mean, that's how you build trust with another human being that you're going to do a transaction with. So
Yes.
I'm not typically concerned that people are going to go away in my industry.
Yeah, no, they can't. When it comes to real estate in general, whether it's commercial, residential, or any other aspect, you're dealing with people who are going to be making very emotional decisions, whether it's buying their first home, buying their first investment property, so on and so forth. And yeah, a AI bot is never going to be able to bridge that gap. You're always going to need and want that human connection. I've heard there was one guy down in Florida, I believe. He somehow managed to sell his house completely through AI. I'm not sure how that's possible or why he wanted to do it, but he did. Something like that I would consider an anomaly. I don't think that's ever going to be common practice, but yeah, I've heard examples like that, and it still
Well,
doesn't
you
make any
realize you
sense.
jumped the fence into residential a little bit.
I did. I did. And like I said, I don't know if anybody's thought about doing that for something like commercial or something else. But again, when we talk about real estate, it's still an emotional process, I would imagine, not just for residential, but for anybody really, because
I
it's a big
think
decision.
in the difference is when you have a residential transaction, it's somebody's place they're going to live.
True.
Probably the biggest investment in their life,
Hmm.
and it doesn't make money. And a house is a liability, not an asset. Most people don't realize that.
Hmm.
It doesn't make money.
Well, it
So,
would appreciate over time, no?
yeah, but that doesn't give you income.
Oh,
Commercial
I
real estate
understand.
is designed to give you income if it's
Right, right.
successful. So you have a different type of conversation. I think the emotion might enter into commercial when you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing involved.
Hmm.
And that just creates frustration, but it's a different type of an emotional response than with a house.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. And, that's again when you're going to want that human connection because if you get frustrated and you're talking to a bot, that's probably just going to lead to more frustration. So,
Right.
definitely important to keep that human connection.
No, and
And
again, if you're going to come from a position where you got research from AI, you want to disclose that up front before you even present it.
yeah,
It's a
always.
matter of your own personal integrity.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
even when I meet with people
know.
before, yeah, even when I meet with people before they come on the podcast, I always have an intro call and I let them know, hey, that my assistant who you spoke with and booked this call for us, that was AI, my AI assistant, and many of them like, oh
She
my
was
God, it
polite. I
was.
could tell though, but she was polite.
Yeah, I try to keep her that way. I mean, yeah, it's never going to sound completely organic. Sometimes you can be like, "Oh, that's really nice and put together," but I can tell it's not, a human being, but still it does do the job, does it very well if I do say so myself, and it helps set up that, initial conversation for us to have because I don't want to just have, the AI book the appointment and then you come on the podcast, you don't know me, you didn't speak to me, you just spoke to that. So
No,
that's not.
I actually listened to some of your podcast sessions before I agreed to do this, and I think they're very good.
Thank you. Yeah.
And after the podcast, you send a very, very comprehensive follow up,
Mhm.
which is done in AI, and I think it's one of the best I've seen.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that, Sharon. It means a lot. And I want to get back to, again, I love this conversation we're having about AI in the future. So if we look ahead, let's say 6 to 12 months, where would you like to see your practice grow? Anything exciting on the horizon, milestones, goals you want to achieve or are working towards?
Sure, I'd like to see my project approved by the Planning Commission in Beverly Hills.
Oh, okay. Can you talk a little bit more about that, what the nature of the project is?
It's something that I've been kind of kicking around for 15 years. And so these are long-term relationships. So it's a combination of three laws that changed in California
Hmm.
and then meeting the right developer for the site. So it's just been kind of going to conferences, scoping out people, seeing where their mind's at about their philosophy on how they do development and what projects they work on, and putting the right people together to make it actually happen.
Yeah.
So this has been really exciting.
Well, that's incredible. Quite a process. 15 years. Do you think within the next 6 to 12 months, like I mentioned, that could be done in then, or maybe a little
Absolutely.
bit longer?
Absolutely. It's kind of like when you know something's going to work.
Well,
Again,
that's
it was a lot of the background work of checking out laws,
yeah.
doing due diligence, and that you don't get paid for that. I mean, that's what I say, the passion or the payoff. You have to have the passion for this business. You can't, the payoff will happen after you do a lot of hard work up front. It's not
Yes.
just like getting a listing
Hmm.
if you want to work on, say, a development deal.
Yeah.
And then
Seems like
even if you want to get hired to represent a client, I mean, like I said, I work on referrals. So
that's,
LA is a huge city, but trust me, everybody knows each other.
I can imagine. Seems like you have a really tight-knit community too, especially within the CCIM community also. So I'm sure the relationships, especially after all these years, are very good, very strong. People are, helping one another, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, here's an example of somebody that I know that lives on the East Coast called me and said, "Hey, my son's thinking about getting in the business. Can you help him?" I said,
Mhm.
"Sure, he can tag along with me. I just got hired to work with an attorney in a family law case because the other side is trying to hide the value of their apartment assets."
Uh-huh.
So I asked him, I said, "What are you doing tomorrow afternoon?" He said, "You want to help me, trespass properties?" Not really, but you want to help me drive around.
Yeah.
So he hung out with me for 3 hours to see if this is what he wanted to do. So that would be a CCIM connection. Like, sure, I'll help out my friend that's, also on the board of directors. I'll help your kid out and see if they want to do this.
Yeah,
So
no, that's great. A good way to get, firsthand knowledge and experience too. Learn from somebody who's got the experience, been doing this for a long time. And yeah, like you said, see if you actually want to do it because, on paper, it might look really glamorous, like a big payday and everything's going to be great. And then when you actually do it, it's like, oh, well, I actually have to put more time and effort into this than I might have thought. It's going to take much longer to see that payday than I anticipated.
no, and all your deals are not going to be Beverly Hills. My last deal I closed was in graffiti land in South LA.
Graf- Graffiti land, that's code for.
I honestly, south of Vernon, Huntington Park, you go through Vernon, you have every single structure you're looking at is graffiti,
Oh, okay.
hardcore industrial. So, I mean, you can't, some people like to specialize in an area. I respect that they don't want to drive around. My drive range is between 10 and 2 during the day and an hour.
Mhm.
That's my radius
Okay.
because of the way our traffic patterns are here. Yeah, so sometimes if you're hyper specialized, you're actually at the fate of the market.
Yep.
Specifically, say if you just did office and the downturn, you were not happy.
Mhm.
So, but as far as the CCM goes, I mean, my friend trusted me to take his son out, who lives here, to drive around for 3 hours.
Mhm.
His son doesn't know me, and his dad's like, "Hey, can you, take my son out?" So that's an example. Um, if I have a deal that's out of state, I will call a CCIM.
Mhm.
I've had some clients that will only work with a CCIM. So if I get referrals from out of state for someone in Southern California, so we absolutely work together like a nationwide team. And I can find somebody who specializes. If they not, they'll know somebody.
Okay. And when it comes to this is a little off topic, but I'm just going to ask, you're obviously over on the West Coast. You ever do any work like around like my area, Rhode Island, or in the East Coast in general?
Sometimes they'll find a CCIM that's local because you have to be licensed in every state. We're licensed in Nevada and in California at my company.
Okay. Yeah, if you were out here, the travel time would be amazing. 1 hour, you're at one end of the state to the other, so that would make life a lot easier.
You have to fly a helicopter out here for that.
Yeah, I can only imagine with that traffic. And I'm happy you mentioned that example, with your friend's son, because as we come up on time here, I was actually going to finish with, for somebody entering in the commercial real estate space today or, any competitive field that you're involved in, what words of wisdom would you share about, mindset, continuous learning, and embracing technology?
You have to really want to do this. It comes down to more, like I said, the passion or the payoff. You need to start from the beginnings. You have some people that are just nepotism. Their parents were in the business, so they can step in and maybe a higher level just because of that. Um, but you need to really start simple. I'd start out with learning leasing and then maybe get into investment sales. But you need to be on a team.
Yeah.
You need to always work for somebody that knows more than I do. That's why I always will have a broker. Or I want somebody that knows more than I do.
Mhm.
My broker's a CCIM.
Yeah.
So you go to the office, you got to interact with people, get your CCIM. What can I tell you? If it seems like a big, huge behemoth to you, there's an intro class you can take. But join your local chapter and just start interacting with other CCIMs, and you kind of understand the quality of the people that you're going to be talking to.
Yeah.
And most of us like to share our education because we're proud of this accomplishment. It was not easy to get this.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. I've looked at the curriculum and it seems, pretty rigorous to say the least.
I have a scholarship in my name at my chapter, and I just met somebody at a gathering a couple days ago. They're like, "Is it really worth it?" I said, "I have a scholarship. Apply for it."
Yeah.
And even our president, she's an asset manager, our current president, and she said, I never knew what I didn't know."
Mhm. Yeah. If you're, somebody who is really committed to pursuing that, then yeah, the CCIM seems like a no-brainer because it's really just going to open up so many doors for you and just really pave the way for you to have a long, successful, and consistent career. Obviously, you still have to put the work in, but it certainly seems well worth it based on everything you've told me. I mean, I know I've never met a personal CCIM, even when I was back in the industry as an advisor, but I have learned, a lot through you and some research I've done on my own. And yeah, it's really worth it at the end of the day if you're committed enough.
Well, I mean, you have to, before you can even take the final exam, you have to have submit a portfolio of your experience.
Oh,
So there's also a fast track if you're in a university.
yeah.
There's also a non-transactional portfolio that you can submit. So say if you're an asset manager, you're not doing transactions.
Hmm.
So there's other options besides just doing a transactional path.
Okay. Very good to
And
know.
word of the wise, if you're going to take the core classes, do them in person. Don't do them online.
Oh, I thought especially today, online would be the easier route. Is it because, you think it's better to have more access to other individuals and the professor, to learn more
That's
being on
one
them?
aspect. I mean, how many times have you been on a Zoom with like 20 people you've never met and you never talked to them again?
Oh, too many to count.
Yeah. And then, you can find a buddy to help you study,
Hmm. True. That is true.
because there's homework every night after class. And
Yes,
these
I remember.
instructors are very high level CCIM, so getting to know them personally is worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's just me. I used to, do more face to face too, but then, my generation, we're just used to everything on Zoom now. So yeah, that was just me talking. But I understand certainly where you're coming from, and especially for a designation like that, making contacts, connections, and forming any meaningful relationship, certainly can go a long way. So fully agree with you on that. And again, thank you for sharing. And again, Sharon, as we come up on time here, where can our listeners learn more about you or reach out if they ever, want to learn more about you or potentially even work with you in Southern California?
Honestly, you can just Google me.
Google and what do you want? LinkedIn or you have a website?
LinkedIn, RPM Commercial Real Estate.
Yeah,
And then if you're in Los Angeles, the beginning of October, come to the national conference at the Intercontinental Hotel downtown.
excellent. Excellent. Well,
Get to
Sharon,
meet,
this has
get
been,
to meet the whole National Institute.
yeah,
Get
definitely.
your
I'll leave a note.
Crusoe.
Hmm. I'll be sure to leave a note on that in the description. And Sharon, this has again been really fantastic. Really appreciate your insight, knowledge, and experience. Wish you the best. Hope to talk to you soon.
See you from South Park.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, and perfect.